Okay, that should be that. I think we're good, dude. Good
Awesome.
evening, chat. Good evening, Maine. How's everyone doing? Let us
I'm
know if you can
doing
hear us and
good.
stuff. All that, technical, taking the box. And then we'll get going. How are you? Thank you for joining us on this. I'm sure you had an abundance of social events planned, which you had to decline to attend to be here. So thank you very much for those
You,
sacrifices.
I mean, it's about damn time. What can I say? I've been watching these for God knows how long, and I said I wonder when my friend Cred will send me the invite to have you come on here and talk about order blocks because
He
that's what
will.
the people want.
It's what the people need, I think, at
Yeah,
this point.
it truly, truly is. So, no, super excited to be here. Obviously, awesome time to just be involved in the markets in general. So,
It's just the
really
Twitter
excited.
engagement, let's be honest.
Yeah, I mean, my engagement's been hurting a little bit ever since everyone found out how thick my neck was. I think they're intimidated, but soon they'll learn to love it.
That's it. Embrace the fluffy giant. Well,
Yeah,
look,
learn
there's
or
no shortage of things to
forward.
talk about. So first things first, of course, if you're new here, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We are almost at 13k subs. Breaking that would be very cool, especially with Mr. Thickneck as our guest. So that would be a great way to mark his first and hopefully not last time on the channel. And also, of course, thank you to Bybit for helping us out and sponsoring the channel. If you'd like to check them out, their links are available in the description below. That's kind of all I've got on the intro side of things. You can see I put some amazing clickbaity stuff in the title, Bitcoin scalp strategy, 2021 predictions, all that type of stuff, which I'm sure we'll get to cover. But for those who don't know and have been living in a cave, or maybe the dark ages of, your paid group when you disappeared from the public eye, they might not know who you
Okay.
are. Do you wanna give us a quick intro background? Because I think you're quite early, contrary to maybe popular beliefs. So I won't spoil any further. Who is Trader
Yeah,
Mayne?
yeah. So I've been involved in crypto Twitter actually since early 2014.
Woo.
I've got the OG status by means of a Twitter sign up date, not so much by money, but that's okay. We're gonna change it this time around. I'm sure of it.
This time it's different.
Um, this time is definitely different. Last time was different. This time's more different. But yeah, I've been around for quite a long time. I was part of the kind of first, not the first bull run, but the bull run to $1,200, whatever it was. That's where I really got my cut my teeth and kind of got my experience of getting wrecked on altcoins and just pretty much everything. Took a lot of losses. I made a lot of money initially, as most people do in a bull market, which I'm sure many of you who may be new and this might be your first bull market are experiencing now. You're like, holy smokes, everything I buy is going up. This is amazing. I'm going to quit my job. If I can give you any piece of advice, don't quit your job.
That's a good one. That's a fucking
Definitely
good
don't do
one.
that because I quit my job. Like I at the top of the bull run, I think I had maybe the equivalent of close to $100,000 when I was 22 or 23. That's a lot of money, right, for me at the time. So I quit my job at the bank, much to my parents' chagrin. And I was like, listen, I'm a trader now. And then things started going down. I didn't really understand short selling, not even short selling. I didn't even understand cutting positions. I just assumed everything goes up because that's what I'd been experiencing. So I basically rode almost everything into the ground. I have coins that don't exist anymore, which many of you are going to experience after this cycle. Barbecue coin, file coin, flutter coin. I can't even begin to name them all. One of them that is still around is Dogecoin, surprisingly enough, but it's about the same price as it was 8 years ago. Yeah, so that kind of really burnt me. I got involved. I got on Twitter. I bought whatever anyone told me to buy. Really basically lost everything. And that was kind of the impetus for me to be like, okay, I want to actually learn what I'm doing. Kind of out of anger and frustration. I was like, I'm going to, put the time in to actually learn how to trade. So I spent the next couple of years actually learning to trade, dabbled in Forex, had probably two of the most notorious mentors in the space, both of whom I think have banned from Twitter, Kazanomics and ICT.
Is
So
ICT
both
banned from Twitter?
it may be a self-imposed ban. Now he
Right.
just posts updates on his YouTube channel because people can't leave comments, I imagine. So
Fair enough. I've been blocked
yeah,
for a
you
while,
should go
mate.
read it. It's interesting, but Both egotistical maniacs in their own right. But at the end of the day, I learned some good stuff from them. So I'm primarily a price action trader. Got really back involved in 2016 in crypto Twitter. Was kind of shorting some of those lower highs on the way down from 20K, and got a shout out from Crypto Dog, and here we are. So having a lot of fun. No paid group or anything like that anymore. That was a brief foray into the dark side for me. It was fun. I think we did some good work. We helped some people, but at the end of the day, it just wasn't for me. It was way too much work, way too burnt out. So now I just post stuff when I want and how I want. I've got a free Discord. I've got a YouTube channel where I do some streams and stuff like that. And hopefully won't have to do any of that after this bull run. We'll see how well we go. If Bitcoin goes to $1 million, I should be a millionaire, and then we'll figure it.
Yeah, it's a classic, there. Right?
Yeah, just gotta hit $1 million. So yeah, that's about it.
Just keep like kind of bringing your Bitcoin target up the higher it goes, as you kind of calculate how much you've spent on the way up.
Listen, I'd love to be a multi-millionaire, but let's get to $1 million first.
That sounds like a decent plan. It's interesting because the way we actually go back way back as well. And at least it feels like it now, because I was also down the price action rabbit hole at that time, and I just picked up because I think you kind of come full circle. That's my view on a lot of price action stuff. Like you learn support resistance, and you're like, okay, it's not support resistance, it's ranges. Then you're like, okay, it's not ranges, it's supply demand. And you're like, oh, it's not supply demand, it's order blocks. And then, you kind of wake up from your drunken stupor and you realize you're back at square one, that it's kind of the same lines, same levels, same boxes. And there's very little edge in finding the, dealing in the minutiae between the systems. And it's actually trading them where you might or might not find something useful. But at the time, I was on the supply demand side of that curve, if you will, or arc. And I came, and you had your Discord, which, by the way, I don't know, dude, people probably forget. PA Palace was like one of the most popular kind of active trading Discords at the time. And a lot of current kind of price action guys, as well as paid groupers, actually came from your Discord server as well, which is fascinating.
There's some interesting stories. Maybe some of the content from my Discord made their way into other Discords that are paid. I don't know. We won't name names. But a lot of the people, and I mean, at the end of the day, first of all, the PA stuff, I feel like earlier on, like it was very cultish. It's like, no, this is an order block. Like, no, this is a demand zone. It's like, oh no, you're an idiot. It was always too much. And then it got into the whole like, okay, well, now who owns it? Who was the first to do it? I'm just like, at the end of the day, like I definitely didn't invent PA. I like to think that I was one of the first people, not the first, but one of the earlier people to start posting a lot of pure PA stuff on Twitter. And I'm happy to see that more people have done it. I think it's a great way to mark up the charts. It's simple. It's more visually appealing than having 10,000 indicators like some people who trade. So, I think it's amazing to see how far so many people have come, many of whom, maybe they got their start in the PA Palace or somewhere else, or I've just been able to point them in the right direction. That's awesome for me. The PA Palace, we're starting to ramp it up a little bit again. I don't know if it will ever return to its former glory, because it was some good times back in the day there. But yeah, we definitely go back. It's got to be 2017, probably when
end of 2017, I think was that period. But yeah, I joined what was the early version of PA Palace.
You created.
That's true. But even before that, it was in a Telegram channel that you had with like a few other people where we were discussing drawing rectangles on charts. But I think people forget or don't realize just how much of a kind of cultish sweep there was on crypto Twitter when that kind of stuff became popular. Like, I'm not joking. People who traded a certain style, you probably know who I'm talking about, but people who, were posting charts for years, literally overnight became so-called order block price action traders, right? It was absolutely mental. Like, things they were doing for years and years beforehand just went out the window to start drawing rectangles on charts, which to me is mental. But it's also funny how kind of price action trading now is seen as I think the more primitive style of trading on crypto Twitter, right? Everyone's got, market profile, footprint, and have all these cool indicators with fundings and CVDs, etc. But price action trading itself has gone through a weird arc. Like, I remember when I started drawing levels in like late 2017, I was getting trolled by a lot of OGs for not drawing trend lines, right? So I was kind of the idiot. And then price action trading became really popular, and it's like, wow, everyone's drawing fucking order blocks and rectangles. We're all doing the same thing now. And now it's kind of in this middle ground where some people still do it, but maybe it's not as cool as it was before. And I'm still here 3 years later trying to figure things out using the same techniques, which is always interesting. I don't know what your thoughts are on the history of this whole thing.
I mean, I think obviously it works, right? So many people have adopted it. People who never used it before are using it. People who had different systems are using it as extra confluence. I think, and you'll probably agree, hopefully, drawing the lines and the blocks and stuff is the easy part. Everyone thinks it's hard, right? But that's why I think it proliferated so quickly. Is everyone's like, oh, it's just this candle, or I just got to take the last high or whatever it is, and I draw the line out. Look, price bounced off my line. Oh my God, I'm a trader. What's hard is doing business at the actual levels. So first of all, can you identify a key area where price might be sensitive? Great. Now, actually, how do you step in? Like, what is your setup? Where is your entry? Where does your stop go? Where are you targeting and why? And then can you manage that trade, the emotions, and all that stuff that goes on once the actual orders are in? That's the hard part of trading that I tell everyone about, right? And it's, I think, something people struggle with the most. Like, I've got a couple buddies who have gotten involved in, crypto. Luckily, before we're at 40K, so they don't hate me.
You're a good friend, yeah.
I'll send them the occasional trade, and I'll be like, listen, here's an exact trade, like stop, entry, target, exactly what to do. And then it will go to target. I'll be like, hey man, like, did you make some money? And they go, well, it came to my level and it started going up. So I decided to move my stop here.
Oh yeah, classic.
And I'm like, well, why? And they're like, well, I just figured if I move my stop here, then I could add more size, or what? And then they have all this reasoning, and I'm like, well, what are you doing, right? And that to me is the hard part. Is once you're in the trade, it's going against you, it's going for you. It's that mental battle, to not mess with it. Really, is to stick it out. And I think the PA stuff. I love making my charts look nice and pretty and seeing things bounce off of order blocks and shit like that. But, I can teach anyone in a day to draw levels on a chart. It's like, how do you actually get involved? And that's something that to this day I'm still, perfecting, because I think that's always going to be a work in progress.
Good points. Yeah, I agree. It's the execution. I just wish I focused on the execution stuff earlier in my career, because I spent so much time charting and then also focusing on trade identification and all this other bullshit, while the execution part was kind of just winging it. Whereas now, way more trade identification plays an absolutely minimal part. I can more or less eyeball it, the areas where I want to, as you said, transact or do business. And now it's the management and actual execution that takes up the most time. To be honest with you, mate, for a lot of my really good trades, it's price coming into a level, and I just think if it doesn't bounce here, it's going to absolutely die or absolutely moon. And then I take a punt and see what happens. It's also come around full circle where I started off with really loose or non-existent guidelines for trade execution and management, and then they became much more rigid and strict and systematized with trade execution management, and now it's kind of as a result of experience, I guess, or whatever else, or just using more discretion in my system. It's kind of come around full circle back to, well, I kind of know what to expect or how a good trade or what a good trade looks like, and if it starts to smell, then I'll get out,
Yeah, no, I think it's repetition, right? I mean, you've been doing this for years now. So like you said, you've seen it over and over and over again, and you can see price. It's weird. It's like a sixth sense, right? Like you see price coming into a level and you're like, the way that this is coming into this level, it's going to absolutely nuke. And you don't know why, you just know. And and that's another common question I get from people, like, hey, how do I know this level's going to hold?
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, you don't. They're like, well, what do you mean? How come I'm trading there? I was like, you don't, right? It's just, I've seen this so many times, and I know that there's a probability that this will do this. Therefore, I'm willing to take, a risk-adjusted guess that this is going to happen.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's something really hard for people to wrap their head around, the certainty thing. Right? They're like, oh, well, it hits this level, therefore this has to happen.
Yeah. Also, right? The screen time, right? That's something they try to avoid, and I think that goes to... They're trying to take a very formulaic view of something which ultimately is chaotic, I suppose. How do I know this level is going to hold? Which exact level do I use? Where do I put my stop? Almost imposing a mechanical strategy on a market which doesn't, at least with our styles, doesn't lend itself well to that. And it's the same thing with my videos and stuff. Like, there's so much content at this point, and people are still like, okay, I did your course, I did like 3 other courses, read 50 books, what do I read next? It's like, dude, like the market, I don't know, start trading. At a certain point, like, there's no replacement for the screen time, assuming it's productive screen time.
I sent your course to my buddy. My buddy, like, he follows me on Twitter, and I send him a few trades. He's like, "Oh, dude, you're making all this money. Like, I want to learn." I was like, "Do you actually want to learn, or do you just like want me to like kind of tell you what I'm doing in general?" And he's like, "No, man. Like, I want to learn. I got the time. I'm sucking on the government teat, getting free money, not working because he's got a government job. He hasn't worked for like a year now." I'm like, "Okay." So I sent him your course, which I think is very comprehensive and good, and it's all free. He's like, "That's a lot of stuff." I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Do I really need to watch all of that?" I was like, "Well, like, do you care?" Like, I mean, exactly. Like, don't if you don't want to learn, but like, this is not something that you just open up a chart and you just start pressing buttons. I mean, unless you're Alex Weiss,
for sure.
I don't know. Some people are just built different, I guess. But
so it seems, right?
It takes time. I told him, I was like, "Dude, first of all, I lost money for I've been doing this for like 7 years, man. Like it's not easy. It's not like you just pick up a guitar and all of a sudden you can, rip a solo. Like it takes a lot of time to even get the basics down." And he was kind of overwhelmed. And then there's also that other side. I have so many people exactly like that. Like, I've watched all your videos. I've watched all Cred's videos. I've taken Tom Dante's course. And I'm like, okay, well, at what point are you going to start going in the chart to try to apply any of this, right? It's almost that like analysis by paralysis.
For sure. Paralysis by analysis, but yeah.
Yeah, that's the term, exactly. But you've got to look at the screen. You've got to watch price. You've got to, take punts, whether it's paper trading or real money. And you got to do it live. Like there's so much information available that it can be a little bit overwhelming. Like, my best advice for someone who's like trying to figure out, find a style that works for you. If that's indicators, if that's price action, whatever, and then stick with it. The biggest problem I've seen over the years is people go from trend lines to RSI to order blocks to market profile and book print. I'm like, there's no way you've spent enough time with any one of these styles to develop an actual edge.
They're just chasing what's popular, right? We've seen that so much, and that still hasn't changed. Like, suddenly, like, no one gave a shit about funding, like, I don't know, 6 months ago, and now every single trader's like, oh, look, premiums, funding reset, etc.
Bro, I don't even want to talk. I have a screen open that has like the spot versus derivatives, because everyone's like, oh, these spots leading.
You're the meme.
I've never used this before, but apparently it's important.
Yeah. You've got the Bitcoin chart open there, and there are some questions, of course, but with where we are now,
maybe look at this ridiculous thing while we're talking.
Yeah,
because that's what it is. This is a very special chart in many ways. Let's see how many questions we have.
So apart from the strategy, if you will, right, which we'll talk about this daily open, because entry triggers, especially for higher time frame oriented traders, aren't necessarily happening every day for certain trading styles. So we will talk about the daily open flip. But for those who just kind of want Trader Mayne's quick hot take on the market, maybe even from a higher time frame or not perspective, what have you kind of got for us?
So let's go to a chart here that isn't FTX. By the way, I trade on Prime. I don't even trade on FTX. I don't know what that chart was doing there. So, I mean, this chart is insane, right? The biggest question that you have to have if you're someone who's trying to say, when is the top in? First of all, eliminate that question from your mind. You're never going to be able to guess, and you're going to lose money trying to guess. I saw a lot of people try to call the top yesterday. Today, new all-time high. Do I think we're getting close to the top? Yes. What is that based on? Absolutely nothing factual other than like, I just feel like this is insane. But generally, these things can go on way longer than you expect, way higher than you expect, and then obviously correct way deeper than you're prepared for. So if you haven't paid yourself any money on this way up, that's a mistake. I'm not saying sell your entire spot stack, but you need to either be trailing up some sort of invalidation or just taking profit at logical levels. When I was involved in this bull run here, what I did is I started, as soon as we crossed $10,000, every $1,000 higher, I started selling more Bitcoin. And that happened very quickly. I sold 0 Bitcoin at 20,000, right? Like, I completely missed the top, but my average sale price was about 14K. That's pretty good. considering what happened almost immediately after it hit 20K. So I have a very similar plan going here. I've been taking profits off the table ever since we crossed 30,000. Converting that to US dollars. However you want to do that is up to you. To me, if I can make, what used to be my salary at the bank in a few weeks, absolutely, I want to take that off the table. Can it go higher? Sure. But you need to not be greedy. None of this is real until it's actual money. Unfortunately, your landlord, your student loan debt, they don't get paid in Bitcoin. They get paid in dollars. So you have to realize some profits eventually and have some sort of systematic plan, whether that's at certain price milestones, certain milestones within your own trading account, or from a technical perspective, when price maybe breaks a daily low, right, or breaks market structure on a certain time frame, it's time to cash some out. Do I think the time is coming soon? Yes, but I also wouldn't be surprised if it, does another leg and then has this isn't exact, but does another leg and then corrects. But you got to be ready, right? Because if the music stops, like you can see here, you didn't have a ton of time to get out here, right? Like within a few weeks after 20K, like price was cut in a third. So you've got to be ready and you've got to be taking profits along the way. Like if you were part of this bull run and you somehow don't make any money in this bull run, you have no one to blame but yourself. If you weren't part of this bull run, learn from people like me who were and others. Make sure you take some profits along the way. The main question I have, like I've determined that I think we're more in like a 2013 type of cycle than we are in a 2017 type of cycle. And that seems to be a little bit more of a popular topic on Twitter lately, is that this could be the double bubble, whatever the hell you want to call it, where we're in like something like this. We see a big correction, another accumulation phase, and then another market cycle. That's what I would like to see. Main reason I want to see something like this, and maybe it's pure cope, is this is happening super fast. Like if this is the blow off the top that we're experiencing right now, and then we're going to go into another bear market, like that's a really short, kind of bull market. The bull market leading into 2017, right, was like almost 2 years long, 3 years long. And then we had the blow off the top. So, I mean, it was just a steady uptrend for ages and then finally kind of got super parabolic. Like if this is it and we're going to see an 80% decline from here, because that's usually what it does from peak to bottom, and then a bear market, I feel like that we're just kind of moving fast in this cycle. I mean, I believe at this point we're ahead of the stock to flow model right now, which is crazy because everyone used to meme the stock to flow model being like, yeah, okay. And now we're actually ahead of pace, which is nuts. So I would like to think that we're in this part of the cycle where we're seeing this crazy parabolic ascent. We're going to see a major shakeout and then maybe a period of sideways and then hopefully another run. That's the dream. Obviously, I have no idea if that's going to fucking happen, but that's what I would like to happen. From more of just like where are we now? Where are you wrong kind of thing? Looking at the daily chart is kind of the highest I would go in terms of timeframes here. Because on the weekly, to me, I don't know about you, there's no usable information here.
Not really,
just
mate, no.
4 green dildos in a row. There's no order block for me. I need an order block to be able to operate. So, daily chart gives you something here, right? It gives you daily demand, an order block, whatever the hell you want to call it. But to me, this is your kind of super key area determining whether or not we have some sort of, larger correction into the, maybe 20,000 region again. I'm not saying down to 20K, but maybe, 25K, 27K. Or this is a major buy the dip opportunity. Looking at the daily, this is the most clear situation that I see where I'm like, okay, maybe, if we come down here, I'm willing to, really get involved in a major long here. Because I think the risk is pretty well defined. And I think just back to the, if you have your stop even below here, which is a little loose, like if we come below here, obviously I think we're going much lower. Even back into the high, there's going to be at least a 3-1 here if I had to eyeball it. This is going to be key. Like if we come down here and we lose this level, I think that's when things could get a little ugly. Who knows? Maybe we have some sort of big unwind. It's really hard to say, but as long as we're holding above here on a high time frame basis in air quotes, I don't see why you would be, bearish quite yet on the daily time frame. You can look at today's candle, say, okay, are we going to close back below yesterday's high? Well, we did the same thing here, right? And then we made another leg up. We did the same thing here. We did another leg up. So, I mean, it's something to pay attention to, but I don't think it's enough to be like, okay, we're going back to 30K or anything like that. Looking at the 12-hour, I mean, every time frame,
right?
Yeah, every time frame you look at, it's just like, okay, this is where I'm interested in being a buyer on the 12-hour chart. If you want to pull your fib and see the OTE, oh, look, it's magic. It lines up right with that demand. The OTE is not some sort of, super secret sauce or anything like that. The best way I describe fibs is a measuring tool. It's like a ruler, right? Or like some sort of like a protractor, whatever you might use when you're doing some sort of math on paper, whatever. It's a tool to measure price swings, and it can project things into the future, and it can also project retracements. I think people who try and convince you that, the 61.8 is some golden fucking number and prices magically attract to you there are probably trying to sell you something.
Because of the laws of nature, right? Because of how our universe is fundamentally built and coded. Well, that's why the 618 works. It's just built in, bro. The
inside of your ear is the same as the inside of a seashell. So
yeah, it's a classic. This white girl Instagram type of trash.
Exactly. I see every time I look at my watch, it's 11:11. So it's crazy synchronicity. But to me, this is just a very typical in trading retracement level. Is this kind of, I just rounded it to 62 to 79 because I'm an ICT fanboy, and he uses the optimal trade entry of 70.5, which is actually just these two numbers cut in half. It's just the median. So this is kind of a standard Trader Mayne long setup, right? You have a swing, it gives you a pullback, and you enter. And these happen all the time on all time frames, on all different assets. You get these kind of 62 to 79% retracement. If you're in an uptrend, you're going to be measuring from a swing low to a swing high, buying a retracement. All that this is a range, right? So like if you're a Trader SZ fanboy, which I know there are many on Twitter, based on all the ranges that I see, because he's the range god. All I've done here, right, is measured a range. And then what you're waiting for, right? If you're bullish, right, you expect the range to eventually break up, you assume. So if I'm trading this as a trading range, well, what I want to do is I want price to retrace into the range. And then I only really want to be interested in being a buyer below the 50% mark of the range, right? Because then you can consider price kind of at a discount, right? If I'm in a trading range here, if you're in a trading range, and your expectation because of the move leading into the range is bullish, right? Well, if we're going to go sideways for a bit, ideally, I want to load up longs here. That just kind of makes sense. It doesn't mean you can't long up here, but that's kind of, how I conceptualize the 72% retracement. You basically are trying to get in long below the 50% because that would be the most discounted part of the range, assuming that the range continues up.
And it's closer to your invalidation as well, right?
Exactly, right? This is going to be your maximum risk reward because generally your stop is going to go below the order block itself, which I wouldn't suggest, especially in crypto, because I almost always get stopped out when I use the actual order block itself. Or you're going to put it below, a swing low. This is kind of loose. I think this would probably be a safe stop placement here. But this is going to be your best risk reward for continuation because even just within the range, you're going to get a 2-to-1, right? So even with my loose stop, so that's a very loose stop, just trading within the range, I've got, 1 and 1.7 to 1 reward to risk, excuse me. And then if I have a little bit of a tighter stop down in here, this is just an internal range trade. You're not even trading a breakout yet, right? So that's pretty good. And that's going to give you a high probability move, lots of confluence, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So H12, same area I'm paying attention to. Again, there's no level up here on the H12 where, in my opinion, market structure is invalidated. I believe H12 market structure comes from here. And that is a long way to fall, right? So if you're in a highly leveraged position up at 40K because you're a fucking lunatic, Just realize that the daily and H12 market structure, where we can remain high time frame bullish, is very far from current price. Going down, one more time frame. Now you kind of are getting a little bit more definition here on the low time frame. I think you can argue that this is probably a very good area to pay attention to if you are a bull and you're expecting another leg up. You definitely don't want to see this kind of H4 demand area flip, because I think that then opens the door to a larger correction, and that this is going to be that daily and 12-hour area right here. So I would watch here. To me, this is very vertical. Like, what is this? What is this pattern? Like, I literally would not be surprised if we just do this.
Yeah, like, for sure.
For another $10,000 higher. But I mean, I don't know. These are new market conditions, I think, for most people. One thing I think is difficult, kind of as how I trade as a price action trader, is I don't have price history up here, right? So it's kind of difficult to set targets and things like that. Why I did well in a bear market is I could look left. I could say, okay, here's an old high, here's an old low, here's an old area of interest, and then I can project those levels forward. You trade Forex, you have infinite amount of price history. When you're in price discovery, things get a little more tricky. I'm not saying you need to throw on your RSI and shit like that. Like, I'm pretty confident the RSI is overbought on most time frames and has been for
like
months.
The longest time ever. Yeah. That's the one thing I get from normie friends. I don't know if you get that, but I would have friends message me being like, "Oh, I thought Bitcoin was really overbought at 20K." I'm like, "What the fuck do you mean? Like, think about it logically, right? Like, we're coming into 20K. No one at that price has ever really been underwater on Bitcoin. Why would that be the point to get bearish? It's just really weird. And also, just in terms of using the tool properly or understanding it, like strength or momentum indicators can also just be indicators of the trend. Like you can see on your example there on the daily, RSI was literally bouncing off of the upper line for fucking ages in between like November and December, etc. So like it still tells you information, but assuming something is just bearish because it's overbought is pretty fucking mental in my opinion. And it's just fundamentally not using the tool correctly.
Was more overbought under 20K than it was once it breached 20K. So
yeah, it crossed down on the most bullish move, right?
Exactly. We broke all-time high here, and this went down. So this can stay overbought a lot longer than you can stay solvent. And it can also reset a little bit, right? So if RSI is super overbought, but the trend is super strong, like Cred was saying, if price goes sideways for a bit and we consolidate, this will actually reset and no longer be that overbought. And that's kind of what you see right here. Right, price started going sideways after being extremely overbought,
and it just catches up.
Into no longer overbought, caught up exactly, and now boom, we're overbought again for the last month and a half, and we've gone up $20,000.
The same with like stochastic indicators, right? They kind of just go flat instead of topping out or rolling over or crossing over, or whatever, and then that's it. You you get another leg up. I think it's just a really lazy kind of way to trade. It just hasn't been particularly useful.
I think if the most value I see for RSI is if you are for a PA trader. This is my perspective. This isn't something I use personally, but I know guys who trade like I trade who will use this. Is if you have RSI on your chart and then you have a level where price is coming into, where you're expecting a bounce or a sell-off from, looking for a divergence into that level. That to me is when RSI can be useful, because let's say you have your key level here, price comes into your level, boom, like this, but your RSI gives you one of these. Okay, now you have a bullish divergence into your key level. That might be a clue that in fact, this was just a run below this low. The RSI continues, and then all of a sudden your level ended up working out. That's about the only use I ever see for an RSI that I'm like, okay, I get that. I know some people use it way better than me, but just overbought, oversold, I think is kind of asimony, especially in a market.
Exactly. It's like fundamentally, do you know how to use this fucking tool? If the answer is no, I mean, you might be the tool, not RSI at the end of the day. But yeah, I think every tool has its limitations. Some limitations just become very apparent and very expensive at certain points in the market cycle or whatever, and I think that's one of those things. A point you made, which I found quite interesting, is in terms of not looking for tops, but like taking profits or whatever. Like, how do we create a framework for these things, given volatility and also just price discovery, not having historic levels, etc. One of the things I find interesting is The reason a lot of really good traders, and our friends included, sell on the way up is because they know it's not really realistic to sell on the way down, right? Or to sell the breakdown. I've seen so much of that type of coping bullshit on Twitter, of people arguing, well, I'm not going to sell on the way up because it could go way higher, but, if we get some sort of weakness or it breaks down, then I'll sell. It's like, no, you fucking won't. That is so unbelievably unlikely, in my opinion. Because, if it breaks down, for example, people think that it'll just be a nice candle that closes slightly below their level, and then that's it, they enter on a retest. Like, it's bullshit. It's not how it's going to work. If anything, I think given the absence of any downside volatility for literally months and weeks, if we get any sort of rug pull, it's not going to be the kind that'll just let you in on a nice backside retest to hedge or to sell, whatever, before going lower. It'll probably close like fucking 10% below the level you wanted. At that point, your stink bids are filled, but you didn't want them to be filled because you're scared, and now you're kind of panicking, wondering whether to hold this massive dump candle long or whether to puke it. It's just so crazy. Even just going back to 2017 or other tops, like the idea that you get a clear exit signal and you sell it, it's fiction in my opinion. So you kind of sell on the way up, in anticipation of that happening, because you kind of blink and you've been rug pulled, right? Ultimately, so that's kind of where that answer, in my opinion, comes from. And I've had similar questions, being like, oh, why don't you sell when you get like a market structure break, whatever? And the answer is because I don't think it's particularly realistic, especially looking at how higher timeframes play out. I don't know what your opinion is.
I think you need to look at your account and say, okay, where if your account is making a new all-time high, right? Your account net worth every single day for months, right? Like, to me, that is the signal, right? At the end of the day, I love Bitcoin. I want Bitcoin to go to $1 million, right? Because then I'll be a millionaire. We talked about this already. Yeah. But at the end of the day, right? Like, I want to make money, right? And like, I don't want to be stuck holding some bag, right? Like, this run is awesome, but this run is pointless if you eat, 50% of it back on the way down. Right? Like you've wasted your time and a bunch of opportunity costs, holding all the way up and holding all the way down. And then anyone who has ever traded an altcoin through an altcoin cycle and has held it past all-time high and all the way back down, the pain, because for you to get back to where you were, it gets exponentially harder the further we are from that point, right? Like, you're down 90% on your buy or 80% on your buy because you bought Bitcoin here and never sold it, and it goes down 80%, you need to do like a 6 or 7x just to get back to break even.
And you probably puke down there anyway, right?
Yeah, and you're gonna sell, right? So I mean, obviously, we did get this to me. This looks like an obvious, an ICT breaker or whatever. Yeah. I ended up trading this, right? But the thing is I don't think most people catch this. I think what happens is you're selling here. Like,
yeah,
straight up 20K to 10K in like 3 days. You're like, get me the hell out.
Like, look to the left when that shit's happening. You've probably got support at like 6K if that. There's no way you're playing that for a bounce, right? I mean, it's mad. So I think you have to just be realistic with yourself. Yeah. Can Bitcoin go to 100K? Maybe. But let's assume for a moment that you take out profits every $5,000 here, right? Realizing to cash. So like 0.1% moves, right? Yeah, exactly. The only risk you have is if you're not on screen, you're not paying attention, and Bitcoin goes up, you're sitting in Tether. Technically, you're in like a 1x hedge short, I guess. You can own less Bitcoin, but it doesn't mean you still can't participate in upside using margin, right? Or a low leverage long or something like that. Like, if your account is, I see no reason why people from here and further up shouldn't be starting to convert some money to, USD or Tether or whatever. And then, you can still play this on margin and make money and catch some of the moves and not have the risk of you going to bed being fully exposed to spot Bitcoin and ending up sleeping through the top, and you wake up and you're down 30% on your entire stack. Yeah. So I think you just got to be realistic with yourself. Like, I'm not trying to call the top here, but come on. Like, these moves do not end well. We know that. We've seen these types of moves over and over and over again, and they end up in vicious unwinds. Does it go higher first? Sure, but it will end up just like every other parabolic move has ended, with a vicious unwind. And hopefully, you've protected some of your costs. I mean, the best traders in the space
are going to make less money than the guy who's never traded before in this run, because he's going to take profits on the way. He's going to worry about preserving his capital. He's going to be hedging. He's going to be buying back. He's going to be realizing profits, where the other guy is just an ape who's smashing market buy at every single dip. And he's going to probably make a shit ton of money, but I'm pretty confident that guy will lose a shit ton of money on the way back down.
Yeah, they get carried out. That's the point, right? Like, if you think back to 2017 and our friends, a lot of whom aren't with us anymore, they haven't died, but I don't know, fuck, maybe some of them did, because those guys literally disappeared after the most bullish kind of retail mania-driven market ever. I can't think of a single instance where, like, the people who are still around had material regrets over taking profits in 2017, whereas I know for a fact those who didn't are probably feeling pretty shitty right now, especially if they're not here with us now, right? It's just such a survivorship bias. And you also just the Twitter feed is also very filtered, where you think that everyone's always in gig-alongs and no one's taken anything off the table. It's just not like a realistic representation. I think generally, for example, price has doubled since the all-time high break. If you haven't paid yourself a single penny, or at least taken out your initial or done something to make your life better, I personally think that's weird, or at least I wouldn't be able to do that if it were me. But also, I think there's a false confidence that if there is any sort of correction, it'll be obvious and you'll be able to preserve a significant portion of this type of move. But I'm more inclined to agree with you that if we get any, and which is likely to happen at some point, some sort of meaningful or visible correction on the higher time frames, even experienced traders aren't going to be able to have a fantastic time going from high to low or whatever, let alone you, for whom it's going to be your first correction, panicking, whatever. Which brings me to another point. I want to get your view on this as well. One thing which I find particularly I'm keeping an eye on is that anyone who bought the Bitcoin all-time high breakout or bought Bitcoin above 20k, they've never faced a single kind of bit of heat on their investment or purchase ever, essentially, right? Looking at the weekly chart, it's just been straight up. Even the daily chart, absolutely straight up. And I think, at least in 2017, we had to get used to paying the price for new all-time highs in the form of 30% corrections, 40% corrections quite regularly, right? So I still remember being completely shocked every time that happened, but at least we were somewhat seasoned and conditioned towards those sorts of pullbacks as the cost, quote unquote, to pay for that type of market. I think in these circumstances, where you basically doubled with zero heat after the all-time high break, that's going to create a lot of complacency and a lot of weak hands. And I think those same traders or speculators, gamblers, newbies, whatever, are going to be the same pussies selling the dip as soon as it happens and exaggerating any downside move, given it would be a completely alien development for them for price to be red for more than 1 hour at a time. So that's also like a dynamic I'm keeping an eye out for. Strong good times make for weak men sort of thing. I think it applies to Bitcoin price action to some extent.
Yeah, that was a good book by there's a guy who wrote a book about that. He predicted, the guy's dead now, so I guess it didn't work for him.
Was it Gann?
But he predicted 2020. He's like, this is going to be hard times because we've got weak men. I was like, well, that's not very nice. No, I completely agree. I mean, I think just even looking at yesterday, I'm in Canada, so it's Friday today. So it might have been, Friday is Friday's price action for, maybe Europe and Asia, I guess. How many people sold this, right? Only for hours later to have it not just completely return to, the point of breakdown, but actually make a new high.
That's mental.
Right. So, and I tweeted about this. I was like, what were you feeling here? And then what were you feeling here? Right. And then how do you feel if you sold this and then saw this happen? Because the first step is learning to manage those emotions. Because I still get it. I've been doing this for 7 years. If I'm in spot Bitcoin and it drops 10% like it did yesterday, like part of me, there's always going to be that monkey part of my brain that's like, hit the red button, get out now. Like, this is it.
It's
right?
over.
Because
the echo bubble. Yeah.
Yeah. This candle didn't look like this long wick at the time. It was a solid red candle. And you're like, oh my God. And you're like looking, you're like, there's no support. There's no support anywhere. Like, this is going to completely collapse and I'm going to lose all of my money. So you're usually going to get a bounce, right? You're usually going to get a bounce. That bounce, and I tweeted this. I tweeted yesterday when we came back to here. I was like, listen, this might go higher, which it ended up doing, but it might not. But if you held
nice
a
tweet,
long here, all the way down here and back, it's okay to close at a loss and just reset mentally. I think that's something that people don't do enough is they hold these losers and then you just become mentally fucked.
See, I don't hold losers. I just double down, so it doesn't apply to me. But
yeah, or you just average down. Exactly. You add more leverage, right? Don't be a pussy. But you have to. I think trading is such a mental game. You have to be aware of like your emotions, and the only way to do that is when these things happen. Is be like, okay, I see this big red candle. It is into support, right? Like that was what I tweeted out, like because I wasn't on screen, but I was like, listen, this looks kind of ugly, but this is support. Right. And a bunch of people I know sold into here. Right. And a bunch of people are now waking up today and they're pissed because price is back above where they sold. And it's Bitcoin. Right. I think people have a mental aversion to buying back higher. Right. And that's why these runs happen, too. Right. Is you sold Bitcoin at 6K and you just can't muster buying back. Because it's higher now.
Yeah, I think the price thing plays a huge part, but that bias completely, that's how you get fucked, right? Especially from like a shorter term trading point of view. I think that's something that Salsa nails really well with just his tweets, where he says that I think paying, 40 grand for one Bitcoin, like as an investor, etc., it's fucking mental. But price is price and, flow is flow, etc. So you just have to kind of forget that and do business in the direction the market's telling you, regardless of what you may feel is reasonable or unreasonable. And also, like, we're always going to be biased towards this because we were buying this shit in March and it was at like 3,000, one liquidation away from going to zero, right? So when it goes like 10x plus on top of that in the space of, a few months, obviously we're going to be shitting it. But that bias certainly cost me on the way
Even 3,000 for one Bitcoin is crazy. Because like I remember when they were $3 and I was buying fireworks with them and mushrooms, like on the Silk Road. Like it's crazy. So the fact that it's worth this much, I think people have this emotional attachment to this is a huge reason why people get wrecked on altcoins as well, right? Is you have this emotional attachment to the price of it. And maybe it made you rich at one point, right? Like maybe you had Bitcoin when it was at 20 grand. It's at 3 grand now, but at one point, the amount of Bitcoin you had was worth 100 grand. Right. And so mentally, you're attached to this when as a trader. And I think the best thing that happened for me was kind of really learning to trade outside of crypto is I don't care about what the asset is and I don't care what direction it's going. Is it moving? That's all that really matters. Right. The reason Bitcoin is so awesome right now, obviously it's going up. And if you own Bitcoin, you're making money while you sleep. But what's awesome right now is volatility. We have extreme amounts of volatility where we're getting 5 to 10% moves, every day, every other day. So there's a lot of money to be made. That's all the trader cares about. Is it moving up or down? And is there a place I can get involved? Like if I buy it, can I sell it higher than it was? I don't actually care about what the underlying asset is. I don't care if I'm trading Euro USD, dollar CAD, gold. It doesn't make a difference. But with crypto, I think people have this attachment to price, this attachment to where they bought it. They bought this altcoin. It was worth $1 million. Now it's worth $100. And like, what if it gets back there one day? And I think that wrecks you mentally in your ability to look objectively at the market because you're like, well, I sold my Bitcoin at 40K. So now mentally, I don't care what you say. If you hedged at 40K yesterday because you thought it was the top, when you open up the chart today, you're going to do everything in your power, whether you like it or not, to try and find something bearish because you're like, well, I already sold. This thing needs to go down now, right? And then you're going to subconsciously, eliminate potential bullish setups because in your mind, it's like, I already sold. I need this to go down. And I think that's something that makes crypto very difficult to trade. And I think what people don't realize is like, listen, like maybe you hedge, but doesn't mean you can't, just punt along here and make up for some of the difference. And
it's people mixing hats, right? Their trader hat and their investor hat, depending on which one is more convenient. Like they'll have a target that they'll have as a trader, and then the market goes in their favor and they suddenly turn into investors. Like, no, it's actually going to go a lot higher. And then they get fucked and their original plan as a trader.
This project actually has interesting fundamentals now that you mention it.
yeah. It's like, well, Bitcoin dumps the fundamentals.
Trend, all of a sudden I'm thinking that sushi coin is actually pretty important.
Yeah, I agree that the timing of that bias is amazing. Omar asks, how do you eliminate the bias you just described? Do you want to have a stab at that?
I'll do my best, Omar. I'm just like, I've quickly flicked through the chat here. Only about half the comments are about my neck. So we have Altcoin Psycho and Loma to blame for that. But I'm gonna wear a turtleneck from now on all my streams. But neck reveal at 100K, guys. Just so you know.
Bitcoin.
So for me, the best way to try and eliminate your bias, right, is you need to, if from a trading perspective purely. Investing, I mean, it's kind of hard, right? Like, if you're a Bitcoin maximalist, like, you're going to want Bitcoin to go up, blah, blah, blah. What you need to do is you need to look at price, forget what is going on here, and forget what is going on here, and focus on the chart, find your setup, and then don't touch it. One of the things that I think tilted me the most when I was learning to trade was, I'm in a long here, like this. Let's say my stop is here and I'm targeting, who knows, 50K. We're just going to will this into existence. And what would happen is price would come in, I'd get filled, right? And then it would do this. And I'm like, I'm cutting, right? And I close the trade and then it comes up and it does this. Right. And the problem is I have this attachment to the price of what's going on. And I'm saying, okay, well, it's below my entry. I'm losing money. I'm losing Bitcoin. And you have this kind of emotional war going on, I think subconsciously, partly, that attaches you to the price of this asset because it's an asset that you believe goes up over time. I think you just need to be objective as possible by having a very clear, defined setup. Don't mess with it. Once you enter the trade, like, especially if you're new, when I enter a trade like this, I'm either getting out at a 1 hour loss or I'm getting out at a TP. There is no in between. Until you get a little bit more nimble and more agile, where you can start adding, trailing, all that kind of stuff, do not do any of that. Lock it in. You're going to make more money sticking to your plan than you are fucking with your trade. So I think have a plan is super key. Be rigid with your rules. If you do those two things, you'll have less emotion, right? The problem is people feel FOMO, they feel uncertainty, they feel like they're like, oh, I got to buy this breakout, or oh shit, we're going to crash, because you have no fucking plan. You just opened up the chart, you saw that was going up, you're like, I better buy, right? Like, if you have a plan, that's going to help you remove that bias. And the other thing is going to be bringing lots of practice, man. Like, I get it. I understand the bias around owning crypto and wanting it to go up. But you need to treat this as a trade, and you need to treat this as an educated guess with defined risk based on analysis that you've done in the chart, that, hey, if I risk some money here, there's a chance that I make back, 5 to 1 based on, this TA setup, whatever it may be. And I think the more rigid, objective, robotic you can be in advance going into the trade, the less emotion and bias you're going to have. It's just money. Right. And I know it's like, we're all going to make life-changing money. I, in fact, think most people are not going to make life-changing money. I don't like saying it on Twitter because it sounds so pessimistic, right? But I think most people blow it in these bull markets, and most people lose it all. And most people will not maximize. I think it's a very small percentage who do really well during these things. And I think it's because we're emotional creatures, humans. That's what this chart is. It's greed, right? It's human emotion. So try and be like a robot, right? Like, be as systematic as possible. The more systematic, planned out your trades and executions are, it leaves little to no room for emotion. The problem is if you enter a long here, hoping it's going to go up, you're going to have a hell of a time during this part, right? If you have no plan. But if you're like, listen, I'm bullish to 50K and this is a crazy invalidation and I'm not wrong till down here, this shouldn't phase you at all if you have that plan in place. If you just open a long here and you don't know where that idea is wrong, you're going to probably capitulate, FOMO out of your position, add to your position, then close it, do something stupid in this period because your emotions are running high. I don't know if that answered the question, but I feel like that was some good word salad there.
No, I agree. And also just like knowing what your mandate is, like, why am I trading this? Like, what am I trying to do with this trade right now? Am I trying to outperform the market? Can I even outperform the market, right? If everything is just printing and you don't have a setup, you don't know what the fuck a setup is, but hey, you seem to be waking up getting richer, then why take it upon yourself to try? I mean, it's just almost greed at that point. Those conditions which are favorable towards your P&L, but those same conditions where or you find it very likely that you don't have an edge in trading or don't have a setup or you're just not a trader, then there's no need to force. It's literally longing your longs, right? There's a very weird stigma in on crypto Twitter, where if you're not in leveraged longs on the way up, then you've somehow missed out on the rally. Whereas by definition, I imagine the overwhelming majority of crypto Twitter participants are net long primarily Bitcoin anyway. So no one's missing shit, right? It's the question of how much long exposure do you have, and that plays to both sides. So I think having an understanding of why you're trading, can you actually outperform the market, is important in terms of advice. And I'd also say being able to distinguish, like, what are you doing as a trader versus an investor, or even are you a trader? Do you have any scope to trade? Is also quite important. I think you'll remember a lot of our friends, and I agree with the general point, by the way, that a lot of people are going to get wrecked, aren't going to keep any of these gains, etc. But it's more to do with keeping them, not making them. Everyone's going to make money, right? That's the kind of allure of the market, especially one that looks like this, is that everyone makes money, but very few end up keeping it. And that's why, again, we lost so many friends in 2017. They made all this money, but they didn't keep it, and actually ended up losing more of it in 2018 via a myriad of sort of scams and terrible decisions. So kind of knowing what you're in for and have your kind of mandate, what am I trying to get out of crypto? Am I an investor? Am I a trader? Do I even know how to trade? Is also pretty important, in my opinion. But I don't know. Everyone's gonna make the same fucking mistakes again, including me and you. So it's just a question. I think
you brought up a great point about that. Like, if you own Bitcoin, you're long, right? Like, I always have people like, oh, I missed some move. It's like, yeah, but you own Bitcoin, right? Like, so if it goes up, you're making money, and especially in a time like now where it goes up 5% a day,
yeah.
Who cares, right? Like, owning Bitcoin and then margin longing Bitcoin, when you think about it, is kind of insane. Right? Like, it's like, okay, I've already long this asset. I'm now going to margin long it with 10x leverage to essentially double my risk, because now if you get stopped out, not only have you lost that trade, but you've also lost value on the underlying asset that is providing margin for your account.
Yeah.
So it's kind of nuts when you think about it. But I mean, listen, this is what we've been waiting for. This is the golden hour. I would say try and move slow, get off the fucking low time frames, use stops, use risk management, and have a fucking plan. And you're going to be way less stressed when you get these types of whipsaws and shit like this. Because this is designed to get you out of your position, right? Like, this is designed to get breakout traders caught, stop out over leveraged longs, make people who think they long the bottom freak out. Like, this is designed to get you out before this move. And so if you have a plan, right, which is easier to do on the higher time frame, in my opinion, is where you're like, okay, do we ever really lose support? No. Okay, I'm interested in getting it along. You have some interesting comments here, man. Oh my God.
Which ones?
There's so many about my neck. It's insane.
Those are very popular.
So my name is Trader Mayne on Twitter. There's a couple comments asking who I am.
Oddly enough.
How do you not know that? I'm CT royalty. Come on. So I keep telling people, no one seems to care. They're talking about how ICT said Bitcoin was going to $100. Oh, that's an L from my father there for sure. He'll hold that one. Risk man, Nicolas Cage. That's pretty funny.
I quite like that one as well. Yeah,
I'm going to steal the Declaration of Independence. Well, after seeing what happened in Washington yesterday, I'm not sure that that's that impressive. Like, come on. How is it so easy to storm the Capitol?
Yeah, I know, dude. I didn't want to get into it, but you almost have to be complicit at a certain level, right? It's like you look at the military spending in the United States, and this is like the home of their legislature on a day when they're certifying the electoral college or the presidential election more broadly, and you have a bunch of like. I'm not going to go there, but it's not exactly SEAL Team 6, let's just say, making an appearance. You'd think it'd be better protected, right?
And the stupidity of the people who are like, I'm going to break into the Senate and take a picture of myself with no mask on.
Oh, man.
It's like, you're going to jail for a long time. Like, I hope it was worth it. Like,
it's
Trump
really weird.
doesn't give a fuck about you.
Oh, mate. At the same time, I think people are also overstating it wouldn't be Casual Friday if we didn't get into politics, right? Don't worry, we'll do the daily open strategy right after if you're kind enough. But at the same time, people kind of overstepping and calling it like an attempted coup, etc. I don't really think so. I think it's a group of idiots got way further than they ever should have, and then really didn't have a plan, didn't know what to do, so they just kind of took selfies, stole shit, and did some really stupid things which they're going to get punished for. But to call it a coup or an attempted revolution, I don't know.
51. but they actually got in.
Yeah. I mean, how the fuck they went that far is absolutely bizarre to me.
I think there's blame on both sides. Like, I think for people on the left to castigate the entire right and be like, if you voted for Trump, this is your fault. Like, no, I'm not. I think everyone can agree that's a small faction of idiots. And the same with, the protests that happened earlier in the year, where it's like, oh, this is all the left's fault. It's like, no, this is usually it's the minority that is the loudest, right? It's the small group of people that make the most noise. I hope that America can have, some sort of, realization after something like this, that they need to kind of maybe rework some things. There's obviously a huge divide in the country going on, but I also wouldn't mind if it goes to the shitter, because the worse the American dollar is, the better Bitcoin's going to do, guys. Remember that
we live in as well, right? Which is rough. You know what? I wouldn't mind a boring America for a change. The fact that it's been a full-time job following their domestic politics over the last 4 years, I'm not sure how much, I'm exactly in love with the idea. So some sort of quieter, less volatile period, I think the world would welcome something like that.
Absolutely.
Although it'd be less boring.
I'm
far
just
more
reading
boring.
some of these comments. Do I think there will be an alt season?
We can talk about ETH, by the way.
What's that?
We can talk about ETH, because it's in a really interesting spot. Like, my basic view on ETH is that I've got a level at 1100, which is the highest monthly close, and it kind of bounced off there, which is nice. But I think ETH is going to be really interesting if it breaks all-time high, and at that point I'd be waiting for, or keeping an eye out for, a kind of Bitcoin 2.0 reaction from the market. For the first time ever in crypto, longing the laggard would actually work, right? Bitcoin broke all-time high and doubled. Now ETH has broken all-time high. That's indicative of risk on in crypto more generally, and now ETH is going to make moves as well. That's kind of the clearest thing I can come up with, but I don't know whether it's going to happen, obviously.
So I think a great thing to explain to people, and I try to do this in my streams, is understanding the relationship that alts have with Bitcoin, and basically going back to fifth grade math and how fractions work. Because people they wonder, and I'm one of them. I'm posting jokingly, being like, I'm long Ethereum and I'm getting owned, right? I made great money on my Ethereum long from the 700s to 1,000. But the problem is I would have been better off holding Bitcoin. And the reason was because the Ethereum Bitcoin fraction, the Ethereum Bitcoin pair, was bearish. And I think most people, it sounds like a very simple concept. I think the majority of people have no fucking clue how that works or why that works. They don't understand why certain alts outperform or underperform. And it's as simple as that. You need to look at the Bitcoin pair. You don't have to trade the Bitcoin pair, but if you're going to long Ethereum USD, if Ethereum BTC is making new lows and bearish market structure, there's a good chance Ethereum USD is going to underperform Bitcoin. Obviously, if it looks like it's bottoming, you can get in and, kind of average in and eventually hope that it turns around and eventually starts to outperform. But if you're trying to be, accurate and time your buys and sells, you want to use the dollar pair in combination with the BTC pair, because if Bitcoin is the denominator of the fraction, right, of the, ETH BTC fraction, if this is really strong, this fraction as a whole is either going, depending on how strong this is, probably either sideways or down. Is there a chance that the fraction is going up? Sure. But if we expect Bitcoin, if you're calling for Bitcoin to 100K, right, I think alts are going to bleed a lot longer than people think, right? Yes, the US dollar value might get drug up, but the value in terms of sats, I think, is going to suffer. Because if you have a super strong Bitcoin, very strong Bitcoin dominance, a lot of those alt BTC fractions are going to bleed out. And some of them are so far from fucking all-time high.
Yeah.
This is so far. This still looks like, to me, this is starting to look good, right? Kind of. I don't love this, whatever that is. But on a monthly time frame, I'm okay, there is going to be a period of time. I posted this on Twitter. I was there is going to be a period of time where this outperforms Bitcoin. But the problem is, and the problem why people lose money on alts, is how many months was it really sensible to own Ethereum over Bitcoin? Not that many. Out of all of the months on this chart, I would say definitely less than half, maybe 1/3 of the time, Ethereum was outperforming. Right. So at the end of the day, your best bet is usually Bitcoin. The problem is people see Ethereum at 1100. They're like, well, that can go to 2000 quicker than Bitcoin could go to 80. Right. I think people have that price bias and they're just like, well, Litecoin's only at 160 and all time high is still 2x away. Therefore, Litecoin is a better investment. Well, it's like, is it? I don't know. You tell me. I don't think so. I think basically for the last 3 years, you're better off in Bitcoin outside of like 5 months here, right? So obviously, I do expect this to turn around at some point, but I would not be surprised on the whole if some of these pairs never make a new all-time high again.
Yeah, this is a multi-year trend, right? And it's a multi-year downtrend. You're going to want to see some decent evidence of reversal before pumping.
If Litecoin goes to here, guess what? It's going to make a new all-time high versus US dollars. But it does not necessarily mean it's not just going to do something like this, right? And it can continue to make all-time highs versus US dollars while the BTC pair slowly continues to just fucking drop, right? Like these all look like shit. So something you got to be aware of when you're playing alts, whenever I get the question about alt season, like, should I long this alt, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what does the alt BTC chart look like?
Yeah.
Just go on Donald's page. He'll tell you if your alt that you're invested your life savings into.
Yeah,
like
I mean,
shit.
This is something we've also covered.
It's always yes.
Well, yeah, he's been, the whole thing meme with Donald is he's been waiting for capitulation for like 3 years and everything's down like 99%. But yeah,
my
it's
favorite.
Nice. Go on.
One of my favorite tweets from the dog was just like, leave it to Donald to just pop up on your feed and be like, yeah, those random altcoin still looks like shit. Just for the last 2 years, every single coin.
With his name,
he's right.
The thing is, he's been right, and his name is just so amazing. Seeing Donald, he's been talking shit about altcoins for like the longest time ever, but with no, hasn't exactly been off base for that sort of thing.
Like this is an outlier. This is an altcoin that, for the most part, has actually outperformed Bitcoin. Right? That's why Link USD has been on such an incredible run. So yes, I absolutely believe that ETH will pump through all-time high and go higher. I mean, I see people calling for like 10, 20K ETH. I don't know about that one, Chief. Maybe, but that FBTC pair has a lot of work to do before you can start talking about those crazy kind of numbers. It needs to break some make some bullish market structure. And in the meantime, I expect this pair to underperform Bitcoin. In that time frame, right? So I mean, your best bet is still Bitcoin until those BTC pairs start looking better. Stop wishing for alt season, right? Alt season is not going to make you rich. It's the chance of you getting into that altcoin that does the 100x, the 500x with any sort of meaningful size and exiting at a profit is so small. And you're probably in 10 different projects trying to catch that 100x, and then one of them does it. You sell it at a 20x, but then you lose on all the other ones. Like, it's like a throwing darts at a wall thing. Like, I know there's all these altcoin, blah, blah, blah. Most of these fucking people, most of the best people I know in the crypto space who have the most money, make their money from owning Bitcoin and like Ethereum and margin trading it. There's a few people who have made fortunes on alts. I think those people got very lucky. Like, it's very hard to do. And I think if you're praying for an alt season, it's like playing the lottery. Is it possible? Sure. Make sure you do technical analysis. Does the chart look good on both the USD and the BTC pair? Make sure to take out some fucking profits if you're up 3x or something crazy. Very few people are good at picking these fucking shit coins that fly. Some people are, like Crypto Messiah is awesome at it. But I would way rather margin trade.
Yeah, I agree. It's also just, to me, having the concept of alt season is generally quite lazy, and if anything costs people opportunities, because like the canonical or somewhat orthodox understanding of alt season is that a period where almost virtually everything on fucking Binance outperforms Bitcoin and ETH, right? That's the idea of what conventionally what alt season means, is that you can throw a dart or whatever, and the dartboard is Binance, and anywhere it lands you buy it and you outperform Bitcoin. I think more recently, I think it's nice to see, it's refreshing to see people take or put weight to altcoin Bitcoin pairs, especially in a market like this where Bitcoin's going mental. The so-called risk-free rate in crypto becomes holding Bitcoin, right? That's kind of what everyone does by default. So if you can't outperform just literally holding and doing nothing, then you're going to need a really good excuse to risk that same Bitcoin on like an altcoin trade, right? That's the first thing. And the second thing, I think being too attached to alt season And I think you've mentioned this earlier. It just creates this expectation in your mind that everything's going to go up, and you don't need to do any kind of research or be aware or do any kind of, analysis on these altcoins, because everything's going to go up. And the altcoin traders, in my estimation, who've done really well are those who've really focused on a sector, on a basket, on some sort of narrative, and picked out the few altcoins which meet their set of criteria, and then they outperform the market. But people who have this on and off switch that either all altcoins are bullish or altcoins are bearish, I just think it's a waste of their time, and you're better off either just forgetting they fucking exist if that's your approach, or being a bit more serious and, making some informed decisions versus waiting for Binance to outperform Bitcoin for days and weeks on end,
Yeah, alt season is when random altcoins you've never heard of and you're not invested in get popped up on your Twitter feed, and it's like, this is up 1,000, and you're like, oh fuck,
and then it goes up another 1,000,
and you're never in them, and it's short-lived. Most of those alt season pumps get fully retraced very quickly. I think you're better off buying alts that have a long-term bullish-looking chart, like a Cardano or something, and maybe it's not going to do 1,000x, but it might do a 3x because it looks good versus Bitcoin. Like Cardano went on a great run. Why did it go on such a good run recently? It's like, well, look at this. What is the last, the month of January has been bullish so far for Cardano. So that's why the Cardano dollar pair has done very well. And to me, this looks like a chart just from a high time frame where I can say, okay, maybe this is starting to turn around on a monthly chart. Maybe I want to start paying attention to the dollar pair, right? Because if this can put in a higher high above here, I don't see why it can't go up to here, right? That's a pretty decent sized move here on the BTC pair. Sure. Very good chance that during this time frame, you're going to see some bullishness on that dollar pair.
You have to, right? Yeah, almost have to.
I'm way more interested in that than I am in trying to catch some random altcoin pump where I put in 0.1, right? And it might turn into, 1 Bitcoin, right? If I get lucky. You can get a 10x on margin trading, right? It does, like with just multiple, 5% moves that you get right. But I think the altcoin season is a bit of cope, right? Because people just want that golden ticket, and you're not going to learn to trade. You're not going to be managing your risk properly if you're just praying that coin. And most of the people who are asked about alt season will say, I'll be like, well, what coin? And they're already invested in the coin, and they're down.
Well, exactly. I think you nailed it there.
Alt season to break even. Like,
I think it's also a byproduct of being underexposed to Bitcoin. A lot of the time, the calls for alt season come in because they're seeing Bitcoin, throw the market around and everything be a slave to Bitcoin volatility. And that's where all the money is, where all the fresh money is, where the narratives are. And despite being in crypto, they've got minimal or no exposure to Bitcoin, as in a lot of cases. And so they need Bitcoin to underperform
this entire way. And that's part of the reason why this is going up. And guess what? You want retail to get involved. Retail is not buying your coin on Uniswap. I've been in crypto for 6 years. I barely understand Uniswap as is. It took me till like a month ago to even make a MetaMask because I was forced to by a friend, right? Like it's the barrier to entry is hard. You know what they're going to do? They're going to get on Coinbase or PayPal and they're going to buy Bitcoin or they're going to buy Litecoin. Like I think that the narrative for alts outperforming Bitcoin, you're way better off at looking for coins that are easily accessible to the public than hoping you get lucky on some fucking degen Uniswap trade. You might get lucky, but that's just not my forte. I've never been an altcoin specialist. If you've gotten lucky, great, good for you. Make sure to take some profits along the way. Do I think they're an alt scene? Not until Bitcoin goes.
I honestly think it's one of those bell curve IQ memes where on the one end you've got like buy easy altcoin number go up, and then in the middle you've got this like crazy selective alt season whatever basket narrative, and then on the other extreme end you've got buy easy altcoin number go up. That seems to be true, but just to restate, people, I'm not saying altcoins are bearish or like you can't make money trading altcoins, etc. I'm just making a pretty basic point that if you're interested, then your altcoin should at least be outperforming Bitcoin for it to be worth your punt, because then even assuming you're right, if it's underperforming Bitcoin, it's just pretty much not worth the risk. And secondly, alt season is likely to happen in some form, in some shape or another, but making that your sole expectation or relying just on that is probably not incredibly wise. And instead of just hoping everything goes up to the point where you can buy anything and make a lot of money, and we've been seeing alt season calls, all of which have been incorrect for the last 3 years. If you are interested in altcoins, there are plenty which are performing well against Bitcoin. in USD terms, obviously, etc. But they might require a bit of actually independent research and trading as an idea versus as a money printer on Binance for like a week or two. So it's just, this isn't like an anti-altcoin tirade. It's just make sure they're worth trading, and they might require a bit of active brain power to end up in that position,
Yeah, like something like this looks like it's potentially in an uptrend, right? You look at this, you're like, okay, this looks okay. It's coming into support. It's made a higher high. It's made a higher low. In a support, that's now a high probability. There's a reason this looks like this, right? It's because of how that BTC charts. And now my long that I'm taking on here is higher probability. This is the exact same as Forex, right? Like if you're trading Euro USD, you want to know what the USD part is doing. You can go look at the dollar index, and if the dollar index is super bearish, right, that's good confluence for a Euro USD long. That's the exact same for this, right? If BTC is bearish or flat, right, and that alt BTC pair looks good, right, that's good confluence for that alt USD long. It's just a fraction. So altcoins, I'm not saying they're bad. You can make money in them, but just because it's like the alt season there, like don't throw logic out the window, right? Like if you're a technical trader and you like know how to market, don't all of a sudden be like, oh, well, I'm just going to punt no risk management because it's an altcoin, right? So you need to just, be logical. So let's talk about this daily open strategy, because it's literally playing out as we speak.
Let's do it.
So the timing is good. So the daily open, crypto is a 24/7 market, man. How's their daily open? So I guess the daily open would be for
midnight UTC.
Midnight, right? So you go on your trading view, you go in a little corner here, you can trade it to UTC, or you can just get a indicator. I use, I think it's by Trader NJ. He's on Twitter. It's free. You just go on here, you just type in trade, just type in exactly what you see here. Monthly, weekly, daily opens, right? Press at, you'll get this indicator. It'll do it for you. So the yellow is the weekly, red is the monthly, white is the daily. So that essentially just denotes where the daily candle opened, right? Pretty straightforward. So this strategy can actually be used on any sort of open. Yearly open, monthly open, weekly open, hourly open. You can use it on anything. And the concept is pretty simple, right? If you're expecting the candle to close up, right? So this would be, I'm going to just do one thing here because I don't like these little fucking lines here. So does everyone know how to read these candles, right? Where they're like this, as opposed to your kind of standard candlestick?
Hey, can you not draw a swastika on my stream, please, mate?
Sorry, fuck. That's funny. How do I make it not look like a swastika? The thing is bearish candles look like swastikas. That's why they're illegal. This would be not your standard candlestick. This would be like a bar candle. Essentially, this is the open price, right? This is the low. This is the close price. This is the high, right? So really what it is imagine this, right? The open is here. The high is there. It just denotes it a little differently. The reason I like drawing it like this is let's assume you have a premise that we're going to be bullish today for whatever reason, the preceding trend, whatever. If you know where the daily open is, right? If you assume bullishness, if price is trading below the daily open early in the day, it makes sense to want to know where this level is, because if we then start trading back above, you're expecting a bullish day, a green candle, an expansion candle. This is a good area to assume, okay, early in the day, we're trading below the daily open. Good chance that's the low of the day. I want to get involved back above the daily open and catch, the meat of the trend for the rest of the day. Because at the end of the day, let's say price does this, right? Now all of a sudden your daily candle looks like, right, like this. And you caught this part of the move here, right? Risk is at the daily low. So it's an interesting strategy that you can use on Bitcoin. You can use this on anything, and it works on all time frames. It's the same as the weekly open. It's the same as the yearly open. Someone said ICT power of 3. That's typical ICT, just renaming a concept to something of its own. The daily open strategy, actually, it's the power of 3. So it makes sense if you're like, I'm bullish on Bitcoin, right? Well, what do we have here? That exact thing that I just drew out here. So here's the daily open here, right? Last night, for me at least, we traded below the daily open. Today, we traded back above the daily open. If I'm bullish on Bitcoin, would it not make sense for me to want to get long at or near the daily open, expecting that the low of the day is in now? Look at the reaction we've had off it as we've been on this stream, right?
There's I've just made $1 million, right, mate. Thank you so much.
This is infinite money right here. You're welcome. On 100x leverage, okay? That's a huge move you've just caught. You're retired. You're done for the week. You know,
Can't wait till tomorrow to do it all again.
You got your pips. You know, 20 pips a day keeps the doctor away, as they say. You know, you can't even catch COVID if you're catching pips. I don't think most people know that.
Great, demonetized now for fake news about the virus. Thank you.
But that's exactly what I've showed you here. Because let's assume that this candle goes like this. Like, let's assume the daily closes up here. This daily candle, right, is now going to look like this, right? This is the daily low right here.
Yeah.
This is the body of the candle. Your entry is coming into here, right? And then it closes here, right? So it's kind of hard to see because it's messy, right? But this is I want to keep actually one thing on. Sorry, I'm a TradingView noob. It's perfect that this is playing out as we're talking. So here's where the day started, right? There's your daily low, right? We're back above the daily open. And if the candle were to close right now, this would close as a green candle because we're closing above where it opened, right? So we would be closing a candle that looks like this, right? Lower wick down there. This is the lower wick of the daily candle. Then this is the body, everything you see above here. And then wherever it closed will be the close. Yeah. So the entire essence of the strategy is in a bullish environment. If early in the day, we're trading below the daily open, you wait for price to reclaim the daily open, and then you get in a long, assuming that the low of the day is in. And this works same for the weekly open. The weekly low, this is not 100% of the time, but more often than not, the low of the week or the high of the week will set early in the week. So if we're trading early in the week, it's Monday, it's Tuesday, and then on Wednesday we do this, there's a good chance the low of the week is in. You want to get as long, close to the weekly open as possible to catch the remainder of the week trend. So that's all I've shown here. That's the exact same thing that happened here. So this was the daily open for 2 days ago, I guess. This one had a much less, significant lower wick. As you can see, this one we traded below it for a while. This one, it was not the same case, but the result was the same. We briefly traded below the daily open, back above the daily open. Look, we came back, we retested the daily open twice. This is the end of the day here, but retested it here and we closed above. So this is a green candle where we traded below, put in the low of the week early, right? I don't think we took out that low. So the low of the week the low of the day, was put in early in the day. You long the daily open here or you long it here. I long this. I posted this exactly on Twitter. I did a stream where we mapped this out live, right? We were trading here. I said, if we get back above the daily open, you long it. I did the exact same thing last night. I said, we're trading below the daily open. If we're bullish, you get long on a reclaim of the daily open. So this is a strategy you can take and you can use on any pair at any time, and you can use it on any time frame. So you can use a yearly open strategy, a weekly open strategy. I know Trader XO. I don't know if you've had him on here before.
I'd love to.
But he has, what's one of the altcoins that he likes? He likes this one, DOT. This order block didn't work very well, clearly. What you can do here, I know this seems crazy here for a second. So here is the yearly open. Let's assume you are super bullish on DOT, right? And you think DOT is going to have a crazy 2021, right? If we start trading above this yearly open, right? And it always generally will be confluent with some type of, order block or supply zone, right? So if we're trading here for, month of January, of February, and then we get above here, that is a sign to me that there's a good chance the low of the year is in on DOT, right? I'm not saying that it's for sure, right? We could do this and then we could trade back below, but this is like an SR flip essentially that you can, use in your trading. So instead of having to find a level, being like, is this an interesting level? It's a systematic way to have a level in mind. It includes kind of some bias identification. If you're bullish, you want to get long above the daily open, right? If you're bearish, it's the opposite, right? So if we're trading and you're expecting a down day, when we're trading above the daily open, if we get back below, you assume that this is the high of the day. You want to trade it down like this. So this is a strategy I use all the time in crypto. I also use it all the time in Forex. Forex, I do more of a weekly open strategy. So I'll mark the weekly open. And then on Monday, Tuesday, I'll look for the high or the low of the week to form. And then I'll look to get involved in the trend the rest of the way. So if I'm bullish, and this is the weekly open. Once it reclaims it, I'll look to get long. I say, okay, maybe that's the low of the week. And I'll try and trade. Maybe I'm not even buying this reclaim, but then all of my day trades for the rest of the week are long biased because we're trading above the weekly open. So that's exactly what just happened on Bitcoin here. This is like a perfect example. Now, is there a chance that we just do this? Absolutely, right? But it's when you're in a trending environment, especially a strong trending environment, if you go back and mark all of the daily opens here, you can see how well they've worked as SR flips for continuation, right? It's not going to work every time, right? But here it worked, here it worked, here it worked. This one never came back and retest. This one you get blown out on, right? Worked great here, worked great here, worked great here. Maybe this one gets blown out. You don't know. Nothing works 100% of the time, but it's a little tool that you can add to your toolkit there. It's an edge. It's something you can use as a scalper, right? So if you're bullish on Bitcoin for today and you're scalping the 5-minute chart because you're a degen, right? As soon as we get above the daily open, right? We're trading below it. As soon as we get above, all your scalps for the rest of the day should be long biased, right? So lots of different ways you can use this strategy, whether you use it just as an entry technique or whether you use it as a way to set your bias. I think one of the things people have the hardest time doing in trading is establishing their bias for the day, for the week. Whether you use market structure or, however you do it, you use some sort of indicator, you use a trend line, your bias is key. If you can identify the directional bias for the day or for the week, all your trades that line up with that bias are going to be higher probability. So this is a very systematic way that you can then set your bias in terms of, okay, I'm bullish, we're trading above the daily open, therefore all my scalps are going to be longs. Something like that. So I think it's relatively straightforward in that sense. You just got to think of it from a perspective of early in the day or the week, the low or the high will form. And then when we flip that level, there's your bias setup. There's your entry trigger. This is a long that I would probably take with the daily open here. I don't love how it looks right now. It looks kind of weak, but at the end of the day, right, this is support until it's not. I don't know if it's going to hold. But now what I want to see is some sort of bullish price action form here. Yeah. This is a potentially good sign, right? We've got a little SFP action happening here right into the level. I don't like how this candle is about to close. And if we get back below here, then you're wrong, right? And that's going to happen too. Like it's not going to work every single time. But if you're aiming for asymmetric risk reward, you don't need things to work every single time. So someone says the hourly looks better in the 15-minute. Yeah, so this doesn't look bad, right? Like if the hourly candle closes as an SFP here into the daily open, what I would want to see then early in this next hourly candle is some sort of bullishness, right? Because right now it looks like we're just going to fucking nuke through this level.
Someone asked a good question, which is relevant to what you're saying here, which was, in this case, do you long the retest of the daily open from above, or do you long the break from below?
From here, you mean?
Yeah, just let's say in a bullish daily open trade example, do you wait for a break above and then you buy the daily open, or do you wait for it to, like, do you approach it from the top side or from the downside, I guess, is the question.
So yesterday, I posted about buying a break and close through the daily open. And the reason being is we sold off almost immediately into the day, right? Like this is, midnight UTC, we sold off, we made a low. I posted the chart when we were down here and I said, if we get above here, I think you have a pretty easy long. So this usually I want to see the break and retest happen kind of immediately.
Yeah. So the reclaim rather than the dip, so to speak.
Reclaim, excuse me. The problem with this, right, is if we close the candle in 3 hours here, if it closes around here, this candle is going to look like this, right? Like it's going to be like a little spinning top doji, because you're going to have a wick above, a wick below, and it's going to close right around where it opened, right? So this strategy is best for a candle where it opens, you trade below, and then you get expansion, and then you close higher. That's going to be the best instance of this type of a setup. So I would have traded this opportunity, but this is a valid, potential long. I'm a little bit more of a confirmation trader, which some people hate. But like, I want to see something bullish here. Like if the hourly closes decent, I'll wait for some sort of 15-minute structure, right, to give me a reason to long. I'm not just going to punt this level first time. I will absolutely punt here, right? Like trade below the daily open, reclaim it. I'm going to punt that, catch some points. The retest like this, if it closes okay, give me some sort of confirmation that it's actually being respected.
Okay, so that's interesting. Bit of nuance. So for those who are asking, the more aggressive at the daily open trade takes place when it's coming from below on a reclaim, whereas the rounded retest ones usually require a bit more quote-unquote confirmation or structure to form, but both are essentially the same trade, if I've understood correctly.
Yeah, I mean, you want to see this SR flip, right? Like this SR flip needs to hold, and it just happens that the daily open is right in the middle of this SR level. So it's more confluence, right? Everything I tell people about supply and demand, I'm like, that shit is useless. Drawing an order block makes no sense unless there's a key level that you're queuing it off of, right? Like to me, the order block is what I use to enter, but they're all centered around finding key levels in price and opens and closes. So daily open, yearly open, weekly open, that can be your SR. You can create an entire strategy as using those as
especially
your
when we're in price discovery, right? When you're at all-time highs and there's a total absence of historical levels to give weight to, then in my opinion, these things start to matter even more than in
exactly what I was going to say, because I don't have a previous level to be like, oh, here's an old weekly high that I'm going to use as my key SR level. Every single day, you're going to get a new daily open, and I can just frame my trading day around that. I'm not much of a scalper, but if I was, that's how I would use the daily open. Me personally, I'm going to use the weekly open and say, okay, I'm bullish this week. Let's try and get long at as close to the weekly open as possible.
There you go. Also, just two quick notes. The first is from me. In the chat, I've posted 2 articles. One is my article on directional bias, and the other is my article on using previous days high and low for directional bias. I even forgot I wrote one of these, but I did, so make sure to check those out for some additionally useful information. But also, if this looks cool, if you want us to bring in more guests to teach more strategies and leak alpha, make sure to like the video and subscribe if you haven't already, because there is good stuff going on here, and no better way to tell us you want more by clicking those dopamine receptor feeding buttons. I suppose that's all they are ultimately, or algorithm satiating clickables. I don't even know what they're called at this point. But yeah, listen, Mayne, you've been incredibly generous with your time, and I think we've covered a lot of ground, which is all going to age terribly, because that's how it usually goes when good friends
we're gonna see
up.
a bunch of daily open charts on Twitter now, and none of them are going to work because we're going to flip the trend here.
It's like funding, right? It's like premiums and all that kind of stuff. It'll be great. Do you have any final notes?
Daily open, it keeps going down.
I was going to ask if, you mentioned your YouTube and Discord, etc. Where can people find you? Where should people look for you? Do you want to leave our audience with some follow-up, maybe links, materials, whatever it may be?
Yeah, so follow me on Twitter. It's just Trader Mayne. Make sure to like my stuff. I'm very, very delicate ego. So if I don't get like 100 likes on a post, I'm very sad. So I need that dopamine, just like Cred does here on the videos. Leave me likes on my stuff. But find me on Twitter, YouTube, same link, Trader Mayne. In about August, I started posting a minimum of 1 video a week.
Legend.
So at the very least, you'll get 1 video from me every single Sunday. I do like a big, long, 1.5, 2 hour stream where I cover Bitcoin, Ethereum, and a bunch of other stuff. And then occasionally I'll do other videos in the week when I have time and if I feel like it. So check me out on those 2 platforms for sure. I don't have any service any longer. I know a lot of people DM me asking about that. I don't do any sort of course or any sort of mentorship or anything like that. I think there's a ton of great groups out there, and there's a ton of great free resources as well. I think right now you're best spending time in the charts as opposed to trying to like follow some person who's going to give you signals and shit. But do what you got to do. But yeah, my Discord is linked in my description of Twitter as well. So if you click on the link in my description, you can come in the Discord. I've got a bunch of educational content in there. I'm posting charts in there and just a little bit more spammy with my analysis as opposed to posting everything on Twitter, but I'm spammy on there as well. So don't turn me on notifications. I can tell you that. But yeah, that's about it. I've been a lot of fun being on here. Been, like I said, it's about damn time. We'll have to come on another time when
we can just use that hour to gossip, or hour and a half, whatever, rather than actually try to explain crypto stuff. Just do a trip down memory lane, I think, next time.
Oh, we could talk about Vegas when I spilled that milkshake in the Uber's car.
yeah.
Club as soon as we got in.
Oh god, yeah. The highlight. There's no shortage on the highlight reel. Well, that's all from me as well. A thank you to everyone for attending. A thank you, of course, to Bybit for their support in sponsoring the show. Like, subscribe, do all those things so we can bring on more guests, maybe even Trader Mayne. Depending on how well this video does, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. You know where to follow him.
Buy so many likes for this video.
It's been a pleasure, Mayne.
Fiverr in Pakistan, fucking blowing this video up.
Patreon, OnlyFans, all in the description. Thank you for coming on, mate. It's been a blast, and I'm sure we'll have you again soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.